My name is Jenny Bernard. I'm Early Years Services Manager for County Mayo in the Child and Family Agency. I'm responsible for the overall development of high quality early years family support services. And I suppose about 6 or 7 years ago we began to look at the practice in a lot of the settings we were supporting and thinking about how we could change and improve practice. So we decided to implement the HighScope model of practice as an evidence-based model, and that's what we've been set about doing for the last 6 or 7 years. I suppose the most significant challenges to implementing the HighScope programme have really been organisational ones. I'm very fortunate to have a really good staff team of early years trainers and development workers. And excellent settings who have been happy to collaborate and work with them. From an organisational point of view, I think we're only at the very beginning of really understanding not only the importance of investing in very young children, but actually making the investment and implementing programmes like HighScope, which have a strong evidence base. So there are constant challenges to get the resources you need to do the work. And I suppose doing the evaluation of the HighScope programme and the What Works process that we carried out with the Centre for Effective Services, as well as guiding me as a manager to further implement, I think it's also going to be very useful in raising awareness amongst some of the key decision makers in early years and family support in the Child and Family Agency. I think HighScope has been really significant in changing the way people do their jobs. In changing the practices in the early years centres, particularly to do with children, the way they work in partnership with parents, and the confident way they are able to collaborate with other professionals like speech and language therapy or psychology or the early intervention team. And I think because we've got a really widespread network of HighScope services, 42 in all, throughout a very rural county with many distance being a difficulty for everybody, we've got the building blocks now of a really good early years family support service by having these centres of excellence with good practice. And I think that's how we're going to build into the future in supporting 0 to 3s, in supporting families, and in particular developing our work to link more vulnerable children or children presenting with difficulties and making a real difference for them in terms of their outcomes. Implementing the HighScope approach in Mayo has really inspired me as a manager. Particularly, I suppose, I've seen staff becoming more and more confident, capable, professional in their practice. It's really given them the tools to make changes and for those changes to be really embedded. They've become great advocates for children in all of the situations that they're in, whether it's working with parents, working with professionals in, say, the early intervention team or social work department. They have become real advocates for children, and I'm very proud to see that and observe that. So I suppose the HighScope approach has really given us the tools we needed to make all these changes, and the staff have been very supported in the changes, and I think that's important. So we've really changed the landscape for young children in County Mayo.
My name is Teresa Duggan. I work here in the Neale Community Childcare Services. We have a community-based service here in the Neale, and we run 2 sessions every day due to the demand for places.
My name is Mary Joyce, and I'm involved here on the Management Committee for the setting in the Neale, and I serve as Treasurer. I've been involved for 5 years now. The committee wanted to support the practitioners to train in the HighScope approach, mainly because of their willingness and their interest in training for the HighScope approach. They had the initiative, they came to us with the initiative in terms of wanting to train. They felt it would suit the service here. They have a long number of years of experience within the service, and they felt that the HighScope approach would be very appropriate for their setting.
Well, we made the decision to train in the HighScope approach. We had been meeting with our support worker. She recommended that we consider HighScope training. She felt it would be suitable for us. We were doing including lots of elements of HighScope. We just didn't have a formal approach.
My name is Joanne Doherty and I'm an early years development worker here in County Mayo. I support services around their practice and the development of quality practices in settings.
Brush your hair!
Oh, okay. We'll brush my hair first and I could let you then tap.
No, that messed up her hair!
Will it?
I suppose going back a few years, our development worker that was working with us, she was always encouraging us that we should look at doing the HighScope training. She says we were ideal candidates for it, and kind of the programme that we were running within the service, that the HighScope would really suit us. So with that, and then we were in the process of getting our new building, this present service. We thought it was an ideal time and an opportunity to take on the training and bring it with us to our new setting, and to plan the new setting around the HighScope approach.
When we talk about HighScope, we talk about active participatory learning, and that means that children construct their own knowledge through hands-on and minds-on contact with people, objects and ideas. One of the most important aspects for children coming into our HighScope setting would be forming the social relations first with the adults and with the children in the room, and forming relationships and building trust and becoming independent.
Management committee here, we, in order to promote the HighScope approach with our practitioners, we have continuous consultation and discussions around how it's been implemented, and to get their feedback if they need extra training or the resources, and also to make sure it's through the reviews and discussions that it continues to stay true to the HighScope principles and the ethos.
Are you ready to share with us what you did today?
One key component of the HighScope that we would see as very important is the plan, do, review sequence, where children can plan their activities, they can plan where they want to work and who they work with, what materials they'll use, and then they have an opportunity to tidy up and talk about their plans then at review, and they will have their thoughts, their words and their actions listened to by the adult and valued and respected.
Well, my role in relation to supporting the HighScope approach in Mayo has been that first of all, I'm a trainer of the HighScope approach, so I would have trained a lot of practitioners in the approach themselves. But once they finish that training, their journey really is only beginning in relation to full implementation of a HighScope approach, because they're gone away with a lot of information that they then have to start to implement. In order to do that, they really need support of somebody who has studied the approach, has worked with the approach, and can support them in that. So my role would be, first of all, as a trainer. Secondly, I would do on-site support, so I would work individually with settings, and I would come in and maybe observe certain parts of the daily routine, even just improve the environment with them, or observe some adult-child interactions. And then the second part of the next part would be that I would support them in relation to cluster groups. And that would be with other HighScope practitioners in the county, where they would meet and we would do a workshop, and then on a certain part of HighScope which I would put together and deliver, and then they would share ideas and share practices. I think the big learning in this one was that the practitioners themselves, the childcare practitioners, wanted to run the clusters in each other's settings, so they could go visit each other's settings and that peer learning, I think, was very powerful for them, is very powerful in relation to cluster group practices.
The staff find that the structure and the routine, it gives them a sense of where they're going. It gives them a sense of direction. Because it's also documented in terms of their progress for the children, especially throughout the year, they can see how it's working. And they also reviewing it all the time themselves, so that the children are getting the very best from the HighScope.
As practitioners, we use the core, the child observation records, to assess and to track the progress and development of the children right through from the beginning to when they finish up. So we're looking at children's observations, and we're seeing that many children are scoring really high in other areas of the curriculum, other curriculum content areas like, well, creative arts, maths, science, language and literacy is a very important one, and also initiative as well.
For positive outcomes with the children, I think on a day-to-day basis, you know, we see the children coming in, they're happy coming in, they're eager to learn, they're eager to get in, get started, you know. They seem to be very secure, feeling very secure and interacting with the adults and the other children in the room, and I think, you know, that's one very positive.
As a management committee member, we can see, or I can see on a monthly basis really, how the children progress from when they start in September right the way through to the end of the year. They grow in confidence, and at the end of the year, when they may have been shy and reserved, they find that, you know, through the routine of HighScope, that by the end of the year they're confident children ready to move on to primary school.
Well, the HighScope approach has contributed to positive outcomes for children here in Mayo. First of all, it's an evidence-based approach that we know has positive outcomes through longitudinal research, but also just on the day-to-day, having gone in and out of settings regularly, seeing the differences from when people were implementing, prior to implementation and after they implement the HighScope approach. You would see children who are taking ownership of their environment. They're able to manage the environment themselves, look after their own belongings, look after the materials in the environment. They work their way through a predictable yet flexible daily routine, and that's really important that the children know exactly what's happening from day to day in their setting. And you will see children predict this in settings such as the HighScope setting in Mayo.
The HighScope approach has enhanced the service here in terms of its reputation. We're very much a rural setting. We depend on drawing families from quite a large area in order to sustain the service. So therefore, the HighScope, the approach, it has grown in reputation over the years, and families now, it's word of mouth. The Neale is providing a service, and its HighScope approach is adapted there, so it has enhanced and increased the numbers of children attending in the last number of years.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye. See you tomorrow. Okay, lovely. Bye. See you tomorrow, boys. Okay, see you tomorrow. Take care.
My name is Mary Gaughan, and I work in the Ardnaree Play School. I'm senior practitioner here in the Play School. There's many ways in which we support children throughout the year here in the setting. Children and their parents would be here to visit the Play School a few times before they actually start, and we would have meetings and protocol meetings with them. And then throughout the year we would share observations one-on-one, and we would share when drop-off and pick-up time. And then one of the things that we have started to really introduce here in the Play School and see the benefits from this is that we would invite the parents in for a day with their child. The first time that they're in, they would observe and experience the daily routine. to see how their child is experiencing play school on a daily basis. And during the session we would talk and answer questions for them and explain why things are happening. The children then would also enjoy their parent being in and would be very excited about that. Also then the second time the parents would come in to meet and be in the session with their children before they go to school. This is really important, where the parents get to see where the children have built up skills, have become really confident and independent, and it's a really rewarding experience for their parents. Also on that day the child is really leading the parent around the room that day, because they know exactly where everything is and what happens after each routine.
And we have Sinead today. Scott's mum is here to visit. Okay, do you want to say hi to Sinead?
Hello.
My name is Eamon Toland, and I'm a parent. We've had two children who've already been through the school here, and we have another child who's currently at the school. So they use the HighScope approach here in this setting, and I suppose my understanding of that is that the children are learning through play first of all. There's a structure to what they do here in the day. They start off with their greeting time, and they have different times like small group time and playing outside. The children share the control of what goes on here. The adults and the children decide what they're going to work on, and so the children have a certain amount of responsibility as well as the adults.
My name's Kath, and I have 3 boys, the youngest of which, Frankie, is 4.5, and he's been here for the last 2 years. My understanding of the HighScope approach is I describe it as a structure with a little s. It's a nice balance between perhaps the more rigid, structured childcare approaches and the very laissez-faire approaches. It's somewhere nicely in the middle that best suited the needs of my kids and ourselves.
We create a sense of community by first acknowledging that the first source of learning for a child is from their parents and their families. We would also support parents and make them feel welcome, being very sensitive and taking them at their pace.
Well, we've seen a lot of positive changes for our children. For example, one of our children was quite anxious and clingy when she was coming to play school initially, and what I found was brilliant was that the staff here worked with me and worked with our daughter as well, and worked through that problem. They were very flexible, and they allowed me to come into the play school when I was dropping her off, spend a little bit of time, and we gradually dealt with the problem over a period of weeks. They were able to point us to external resources and ideas and people who could help us, and as a team we all worked through it together, and I thought that was excellent.
My name is Deirdre Iris, and I'm a childcare practitioner here in Ardnaree Playgroup. I decided to train in the HighScope approach because when I started working here they were already implementing the HighScope routine, so I observed the girls with the children and how they have a positive interaction with the kids and how they share the control.
I think the HighScope approach provides positive outcomes by providing a genuine ear for the kids, so they feel their voices are heard. They make the choices, their abilities they work at their own abilities, and they make, I suppose, throughout their life they learn to make these life decisions.
Yeah, we're very happy with the way that their independence and creativity is encouraged here in the play school. There isn't an emphasis on ABCs and 1, 2, 3s directly. They learn through playing, and they have a choice in what they do. I think it helps them to work towards their own strengths and interests, and because of that, they learn independence. They're able to go and learn independently, and so we found that they're able to plan things and take things on themselves.
I suppose some of the more significant changes, I suppose there's 2 big areas for my child in particular. One certainly is confidence, and this whole principle of getting the child to choose and plan their day. I see very much my child, you know, having the confidence to say this is what I want to do and this is how I want to do it. And I suppose the other thing would be, but that's quite peculiar to my own child, he would not be a very good eater, very poor eater actually. And whilst we encourage where we possibly can at home with family meal times and trying to encourage him to eat well, the group feeding sessions that have formed part of the structure of the HighScope have been extremely positive for my son. You know, the peer pressure or otherwise, you know, has really helped him get over some of his feeding problems. We've still some way to go, but it's all been a very positive experience.
My name is Laura McNally and I'm an early years development worker with the early years services in the Child and Family Agency, and I'm also a HighScope trainer, and I would work with groups on quality and support them in their practice and improving their practice for children and in turn for the families. The most significant impact that I've seen in services in Mayo from delivering the HighScope approach is the quality. Staff are empowered, they're able to improve the quality of their services dramatically, and they just flourish. For example, when we first started as development workers, before we were doing the HighScope training, it was very difficult to get groups to move on and to improve the quality. I might go in and give them support, and I could walk out and they'd say, what did she say, what did she want? Where now we have this framework to use the HighScope, and staff know and the teams know exactly what they need to acquire to each different level and how they can improve, and it just kind of puts everyone on the same playing field. That in turn then has helped the quality of their services, it's helped the children in their services, all the learning environments in Mayo, inside, they're really developed, the routine is really good, and the adult-child interactions I see improving every time I go into a service.
What I would say to other childcare practitioners about starting the HighScope approach is that it's a journey of learning. You're constantly learning, and there's a lot of support along the way. For us, it's Laura McNally, who comes and guides us in our ideas and how to bring the place on. And also we get together in cluster meetings where we get to meet other childcare practitioners, and we visit other play schools and we talk about our ideas, or we will focus in on a certain area in HighScope.
I think the biggest impact I have seen here is the change from when they start to when they finish. I've seen kids that I've worked with coming in very timid, very shy, some with speech difficulties or other, like no English. By the time they're leaving, you see them bursting with happiness and speaking where we never would have heard them speaking.
I would feel the most significant change is when children learn, develop and use the problem-solving skills. I feel that in this supportive environment, children learn that they can solve problems, and we see conflict as a learning opportunity for children. So it's amazing from the beginning of the year to see the children when they come in, from learning and getting to know the skills to actually putting it in place by the end of the year and being so independent and capable of solving problems themselves, coming up with ideas that they can really solve problems, and it's a skill that they will have for life, and I think that benefits the wider community, their families.
Now, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Beth. Lily, can you tell us how you're feeling this morning?
My name is Anne Halligan, and I'm co-owner and manager of Curious Minds Preschool in Castlebar. And I also work as a practitioner on the ground with the children. I decided to train in the HighScope approach because before I would have been trained in the HighScope approach, I would have used, pieces from other approaches and not one entire approach. Even though it was child-centred, it was play-based, I still felt that I didn't have a whole approach kind of to use with the children.
So you're feeling happy and excited. Can you tell us why you're feeling happy first? Mary's put out the slide. That's your babysitter.
I decided to train in the HighScope approach because it's well documented, it's a validated approach, and it's also, while it's well structured through the daily routine, it's also flexible to meet the children's needs.
Sean, can you pick another one?
The HighScope approach that is used in the setting is a safe and secure environment for the child to learn in. The child is taught through their own interests and own choices, and they are encouraged to, with a hands-on approach, they're motivated to think independently, to make their own choices, and there is a strong child-adult interaction.
Well, my son came into the setting as an extremely shy and non-English speaking child, and his communication with friends were limited through the language barrier. Over the time, my son made a great progress in learning this language. He has learned many songs and English words, and today he's able to use them on the way of active communication with friends. I also see Wojciech as a more independent boy, able to carry out many different tasks at home by himself. But the most significant change that I see, that from a very shy boy, he became a more social skilled child, able to follow the rules, interact with the friends in appropriate manners, but also he is able to show a good sense of humor. My son gained many important skills needed him to start a school. He is able to, well, he's familiar with the letters of the alphabet, but also he mastered the early math skills like counting up, matching and sorting.
What is great about the HighScope approach is the ongoing support that we receive in the form of cluster meetings where people who've been trained in the approach will get together in one another's setting, and through the support, with the support of the development worker, we will look more in depth at some aspect of the HighScope approach. The development workers would come on a regular basis to visit the setting and maybe sit back and observe or carry out a PQA. But this is done in a very supportive way, that, you know, it's around kind of celebrating the things that we're doing well and maybe looking at areas that we could improve on. And this has been, you know, this really has, I think, helped us to achieve the level of quality that we have within the preschool.
Paddy!
Are you on show?
We now see children as confident and competent learners, and I think that's the most difficult part of the HighScope, is sharing control, trusting children.
We haven't done it that way. Will we try it? Okay, let's stand up and see.
Row, 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 row.
What really makes this job so worthwhile for me is seeing what children are capable of on a daily basis when you give them that control, and when you provide an environment that they can explore and experiment with.
The positive benefits that the HighScope brings to children would be they're more independent, they're more confident in themselves. We also do the 6 steps of conflict resolution. At the beginning of the year, we would take the children through the 6 steps. Towards the end of the year, they're coming up with their own solutions, solving the problems all by themselves. This also follows through into the home environment, where they bring the conflict resolution home with them, solving problems at home with their own siblings.
The change that we've seen in Paddy since he started here and the HighScope approach is he's become more confident in himself. He's expressed himself a lot more through words, whereas before it would have been throwing tantrums or, you know, lashing out. Whereas now he'll tell us, be it a conflict with a child here or a family member, he will explain how he's feeling and why he's feeling that way, and he can nearly always solve the problem himself. So he's independently thinking and solving his own problems, which is huge, and a trait that I'm sure he will use throughout his whole life.
Two of the main things that parents talk about their children bringing home with them, and that's from talking to parents who maybe their children have moved on to national school, they will say that children being able to talk about their feelings, being able to name their feelings, and also the solving problems. I remember one parent saying to me that this little boy, who maybe was a bit of a demon at home, was now coming home and talking about, you know, how his feelings and how when things happened, he would come up with, we need to talk about this, we need to solve this problem. So he was bringing the conflict resolution home and using it with his peers and with other members of the family.
Oh, I said, so that's the problem. Well, I wonder how we could solve it.
I think the most significant changes I've noticed in children is the increase in their self-confidence and their independence. I think this is down to the adult-child interaction that HighScope promotes. It encourages practitioners to share control with the children and encourage them to do things for themselves.
One of the most significant changes I would see in children when using the HighScope approach is that children become more confident in themselves. At the start of the year, some children will be quite shy, and through giving them the opportunity so that their voices can be heard through greeting time, and where they also can become leaders through large group time, it builds up their confidence, and at the end of the year they are confident in themselves.
I think there's been many significant changes in relation to settings that have started to implement or are implementing the HighScope approach. For children, the daily routine has been huge, where children, you see them tracing the daily routine, tracking their day, knowing what's coming next, predicting what's coming up. So you might have a child at circle time telling another child what they're going to do at planning time, because they know there's going to be a planning time today and I'm going to be able to plan to do that. So that's one big one. I think the learning environment, even though learning environment in play-based practices is quite similar, but the fact that children can, it's very well labelled, organised, lots of open-ended materials, and that's been a big change in settings that have started implementing, is to having really good, authentic, open-ended materials. I think the adult-child interactions have been a significant change. Practitioners have said themselves that they find their work so much easier because they have all these strategies around interaction with children, playing in partnership with children, referring children to each other for help. All these strategies have supported them in their role as practitioners, and that the problem-solving approach, I think, has been a significant change, where adults are getting children to regulate their own feelings, to problem-solve with each other, and to use the strategies that are outlined in HighScope for a problem-solving approach. I think they're some of the really significant changes. And I think most of all, I think we have, the HighScope approach has given adults the strategies to become really good reflective practitioners. They're consistently reflecting on their own work, and HighScope has given them that system to do so, to reflect on their own work, which is really important.
I think that other practitioners should use the HighScope approach and do the training because it's a very practical overview of the preschool curriculum. It provides you training in how to plan the curriculum, how to implement it, how to lay out your environment, and also how to interact with children on a daily basis.
We're going to jump and twirl, 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 and wiggle our waddles away. Wow!
I would encourage other practitioners to train in the HighScope approach because it's a very practical approach, it's an overall approach, it gives you skills when dealing with parents and with children.
If you see an imitator, so don't forget to scream.
I would like to encourage all the parents who will be send their own children to some childcare setting in the near future to take their decisions more awarely and choose these settings where these programs are implemented. I think that HighScope programs promote children's independence, ability to make their first choices, and I think that it's worth to be aware about what HighScope programs are about. So we should be interested in knowing the major ideas and assumptions of this program to could extend the active learning process also at homes.
Parents can expect from the HighScope approach their children that they will be taught for the child's own interest, and the child would have choices in what they would learn. They'd be highly motivated. It's a safe and secure environment where there is so many materials made available. It's a fantastic place. My son loves it. He has become confident, happy, very sociable, and I would definitely encourage parents, this is the way to go in the future. It's a super setting, and the children love it, and that's all we want for our children, is to be happy, and this is definitely the place where they will be happy.